Aarti is an author, a journalist, and host of the podcast Art of Power. Growing up as an immigrant child in Queens, New York, Aarti spent her 20s organizing immigrant prisoners post 9/11. She then pivoted in 3 years to become NPR Silicon Valley correspondent. Aarti's memoir, Here We Are, chronicles her family's journey from India to New York City, their struggles with the American justice system, and her own path to success. If you may have seen her books outside, and you might have grabbed a copy. Looks like that, and yeah, if you haven't, please check outside to see if we have any copies left over. But with that, I am honored to introduce Aarti. You're gonna have, this is a treat, you all. So, Aarti, come on up.
Thank you. Good morning, y'all. How are you? You awake? You're caffeinated? You're fed? You're here? I got nervous. The stretching, people left. I was like, oh no, why did I travel here from San Francisco? No, I'm kidding. It's wonderful to see you all here. This is a very diverse group with a lot of people of color, and people were in their seats by 8:30 a.m. this morning. Not colored people time. That is how deeply you care about this issue. I'm going to return to that fact in a moment. My name is Aarti Shahani, and in 2016, I was working full-time as a journalist. I was in a major newsroom, NPR, and Donald Trump won the election. And that moment sent newsrooms into an existential crisis. What do we do with our platform? What are the most important stories to tell? That was happening in every major newsroom in America. And I noticed something interesting happening for me. I am a migrant, born in Morocco, came to Queens as a child. We overstayed visas and were undocumented. The migrant journey is very close to me. And I was not interested in getting in shouting matches. Here was this guy telling a story about my people and my journey. And what I realized was, in part, it's because I don't know my own story. At age 37, I was an award-winning investigative journalist. I'd had the great fortune of having full scholarships to the Brewerly School for Girls on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, the University of Chicago right down the road from here, Columbia University, Harvard University. I was the product of fantastic American education, and because I did get status, not saddled with student debt. And I could not answer, why did my parents come to America? Besides, for a better life. I already see heads nodding. It means many of you know what I'm talking about. Another layer of truth, if I'm being real with y'all. I was at that juncture really resentful of my family's decision to come to America. And why? I was 37 years old. I was unmarried. I could not seem to figure out my love life. Anyone relate to that? Come on. All right. And I had this inkling, I had this notion that, you know what? I had such a rocky upbringing. We were poor. Lots of bad things happened to each of us along the journey of migration. Migration is a brutal sport. The faint of heart don't do this thing. And I sense that maybe I'm just too unrooted. Maybe my irresponsible parents decided to take 3 small children and cross the ocean and live undocumented, and it was reckless of them. These are very inconvenient thoughts to have in a political context that is shouting in each direction about the migrant. But if I'm being real with you, I had that curiosity, and I have by now, since the publication of this book, spoken to thousands and thousands of people, so I understand that dissonance inside of me exists all over the place. It's not just me. Again, I see the heads nodding. So, in classic Aarti fashion, I didn't just decide I'm going to find out. I decided I'm going to make an entire project of it. I decided I'm going to write my first book. It's going to be my family's migrant story. I need to write a proposal and sell the book, and once the project's infrastructure is in place, I can finally talk to my mother. It's not always so easy to talk to your mother. One of my sheroes from NPR is a woman named Terry Gross, who hosts the show Fresh Air. And I remember one time I visited her in Philadelphia, and she had shared with me that she does not like to interview her guests in person. She far prefers the phone, so she doesn't have to be tripped up by physicality. I use that tip to talk to Mom. I holed up in a Buddhist monastery while I was writing my first book. I took a sabbatical from work. I was able to do that. A Buddhist monastery, by the way, is a lot like a college campus. And what I mean by that is it's a protected space for quiet, for reflection. The world is very busy and chattery, but here is a place where you physically slow down and you mentally expand. So I call up Mama, and I ask her, why did we come to America? Answer, for a better life. No, okay, but like the timing of it. You just had me, you didn't really have any life savings. It was risky, why? And then for the first time, my mother opens up about her more than decade-long experience of being brutally physically abused by my father's family. My parents lived in what's called a joint family. That's very familiar to many people in this room. And in this joint family, she was harmed in ways I'm not going to explain. It's her story, not mine. But needless to say, I was nauseated and bedridden, hearing about the kinds of assault she went through, and mentally as well. And she told me that one day she swallowed a bottle of pills, and she just wanted to end her life. And she woke up in a hospital. My father was there. She did not successfully kill herself. 9 months later, I was born. My mother and father brought me home from the hospital back into that joint family. They were trying to make it work. And my grandmother, my father's mother, stood at the doorway, and she said, "What have you brought me?" And they said, "It's a baby girl." And my grandmother said, "Get her out of my sight. This bitch is bad luck." And so my mother and this newborn went to go sleep elsewhere. And my father finally agreed. "Okay, Nina, darling." They call it darling is their way of pronouncing darling. "Let's take the children and go to America." Because it was easier for my parents to risk our security and be illegal or undocumented in a new land than it would have been to try to move down the street from in-laws who were rageful. That was the calculation they made. And guess what? A lot of people, particularly migration spurred by women, has to do with the conditions of one's family and patriarchy in the homeland. Learning the truth of why we came to America had a couple of impacts on me. I'm going to talk about one now and one later. The first order impact was the resentment dissolved. And I felt renewed in my own sense of purpose in this country. I thought to myself, what would my grandmother make of my life now? I'm a 37-year-old woman. My job is to use my mouth, this thing that's a marriage liability, use it to speak to millions of Americans at a time. I'm a homeowner in the Bay Area. Guess what? That's money. Thank you. And so learning the truth of that journey that was sitting there just beneath the surface, it has been, for me, a deep gift and one that I will impart to the next generations. Interestingly, I will tell you, I spoke with Governor Pritzker shortly after his remarks, and I gave him a copy of my book, and he said, My great-grandfather wrote a memoir 150 years ago. It's just for the family. And I'm like, did you read it? He's like, I read it. It completely changed my understanding of migration. Why does he care? Why did he stand here and speak with you today in the way that he did? Why are his actions his actions? Because he has this intergenerational awareness. And so this is my call to action. You are academic leaders, student leaders. You are the guardians of the issue of migration and the constituency who are immigrants on your campuses. Can we together take the issue of migration, the journey, the identity, and remove politics from it and make campuses a space where students and faculty and leaders can actually learn their own migrant story? Is it possible to bring the migration journey into core curriculum, into the freshman read, into whatever structure actually allows people to learn? Because last time I checked, the point of colleges and universities is for us to learn. And I don't mean by learn, shout opinions to each other. When you listen to the national debate, what I notice about it is it's dumb. It literally sounds like a bunch of kids who haven't read anything going and shouting at each other. You've been in those classes where no one does their reading. It sucks. And that is our country. Let's do better. This notion I have about a migrant renaissance, that's sort of the term I've given it in my head. I want to emphasize that the key thing that colleges and university academic leaders have to do is help people approach the question of their own migration journey as an investigative journalist. Here's what I mean by that. In investigations, if you've gone on your research, if you've gone on your reporting, and you come back just affirming what you already thought and knew, means you didn't really do your homework. You didn't dig deep enough. You didn't ask a meaningful question. The point is to surprise yourself. That is the bar you're trying to hit. And there are very few places in society where people can slow down and dig deep anymore. I also think that this call to action is ChatGPT proof. Let me explain this. You can't ask the AI, when did my family come here, give me the crib notes. You actually have to talk to people. You have to establish your own ground truth. Now you're thinking, well, what if I'm not first or second gen? What if everyone's passed away? Here's a story of Ellis Island. Ellis Island was, for many years, a junkyard. Literally, hawkers would ride their boats over, grab whatever metal they could, and no one cared about it. But during the civil rights era, a bunch of second and third and fourth generation migrants, and I use the word migrants because America is very funny this way. In most parts of the world, if you say, oh, I'm fourth generation, you're still considered an immigrant. Go to Japan and say that you're fourth generation. You're not Japanese. But in America, the third and fourth generation, heck, even the second generation acts like, oh, we're just American. What are you talking about? How ahistorical are you? Come on, people. Why are we alienating ourselves from the very identity that connects all of us? Back to Ellis Island, these second, third, fourth generation people were like, oh, having an ethnic identity is cool. The civil rights movement made it so. And they wanted to know their own story because you know what? It's hard feeling unrooted. And so if you've ever gone to the Ellis Island Museum, it's a beautiful monument to that journey. They have these audio recordings of people in their 80s and 90s recounting when they came when they were just 5 or 7. I was particularly moved by the stories of women who talked about wanting to escape persecution that was not called persecution, right? Communism was persecution. Patriarchy was not persecution. We were not given that language or that legal protection. But you heard it over and over and over again in those stories, and I thought, wow, my mother was continuing in the tradition of the Irish and the Italian ladies who came before her. I get it. And guess what? The human journey remains continuous. What if you set people up to investigate their migrant journey using the tools, primary, secondary, tertiary sources. And they find out bad things, sad things, dirty things. That is okay. It is very likely you will discover a history of cutting corners and playing games. That is also a standard part of the migrant journey. But to suggest that the only people who deserve to be here are the perfect ones and everybody else does not is to be completely ahistorical and non-factual. And so how do we, thank you, how do we, there was not more woo, how do we saturate the consciousness, all right? And additionally, I want to propose, Governor Pritzker was talking about the need for an economic renaissance, and I immediately thought, brother, that doesn't happen without a migrant renaissance. And what I mean by that, thank you for that, 2 applauses. What I mean by that, there's a fascinating book by these 2 economists. The book is called Streets of Gold, America's Untold Story of Immigrant Success by Rand Abramitsky and Leah Boustat. My favorite chapter in that book is when they, like economists, tackle the question of why are second-generation migrants so successful? Now, it is a well-known fact for anyone who knows anything that in terms of income, economic achievement, and home ownership, second-generation migrants outperform white Americans. This is the other myopic way we talk about migration in the debate. It's like we act as though second generation isn't part of the journey. Now, I've been aware of that fact of outperforming white Americans for quite a while. And I always assumed, well, it's because we value our parents' sacrifice. We're so moved by their sacrifice it pushes us harder and harder. Incorrect. According to the data, these economists decided they were going to look at something. The white Americans who are willing to move for work, who are willing to leave the hometown they were raised in to go and chase opportunity, how did those folks compare to second generation? Oh, then their outcomes are the same. Mobility explains success. And so as we in America ask, why are we not successful, in the same moment that we are dumping on those people who are willing to move for opportunity, we may want to ask ourselves, oh, is that actually a solution? Can I gain the courage and the confidence to move for opportunity, which is terrifying? Can I do it? Because you know what? It's in my ancestry. I can literally envision the 4th and 5th generation folks who think migration is an exterior thing, a thing to hate or to pity. Hate and pity are thin emotions. They are cheap, they are fast, they are easy. Empathy, you have to work for. So if our campuses create a context for true empathy, for true knowledge, those 4th and 5th generation students, they will learn surprising things using primarily the secondary and tertiary resources, and maybe they will gain the confidence they need to create that economic renaissance the governor was talking about, right? This country is struggling and we know it. We are but one data point in that larger crisis. I mentioned earlier that I needed to know if it was a mistake to come to America. What I didn't mention is that when I was 19 years old, just down the road, I got a call from my father. He was crying. I'd never heard him cry before. He had just learned that he was going to be put into deportation proceedings to be exiled from America. At that point, I decided I would stop going to school to fight my father's case. I thought I would fight for 1 year and then get back to my academic achievement, and it took 12 years. And those 12 years were very hard. September 11th happened in that time. My family was at the forefront of deportation going from a historic relic that barely happened to the new normal. It started under the administration of Bill Clinton, not Donald Trump. And in those 12 years, it was hard. My father broke down physically, his leg was amputated, multiple heart attacks, fear of the door knocking. It was not a life worth living. And so I had wondered, when we finally won his case, and I am proud to say I ran circles around ICE and beat it. And it's incumbent on me to share with you, the one letter of support I got from a congressman was not a Democrat. Every Democrat said no, it was a Republican. Keep your mind open. That's the point there. Don't even need to applaud for that, just making a point. I don't usually have so much commentary on this part. I don't know what's going on with me today. Even though we won, when you fight for something that's really hard and you pour everything into it, you wonder, was it worth it? Did I make the right bet with those 12 years? If I hadn't been so myopically focused on that, would I have advanced more in my own life? Lots of regret, lots of regret. Again, that regret was building so hard and so fast. And again, when I learned my mother's story, our origin story, I was like, oh my God, if I did not fight the way that I fought, my father would have been deported, and my mother, who was by then a US citizen, would have left with him to go and live with the exact same people who had brutalized her decades earlier. So was it worth it? Of course. It's not even a question. And I realize also learning my mother's story has fundamentally transformed my approach to public policy. We talk about immigration as though it's a men's issue. Predators, or all the language put on, it's hyper-masculinized. Meanwhile, in terms of the data, the majority of immigrants now are women and children. This is a women's issue, and I will never entertain a conversation about this that ignores that fact, because it's true to me, and it's true to apparently the majority of newcomers. So this call to action I'm making, and it's like literally I am speaking to each of you. I want you to scan your campuses, scan the curriculum, see where are the opportunities to, at the most fundamental level, reintroduce a literacy around migration grounded in facts and self-awareness. Students are motivated to learn about their origin stories. There is a reason Ancestry.com is so powerful and popular. People want to know in a safe environment. Outside of a safe environment, it's too hard to bear. This call, if you do it, I guarantee you, you will be building power. One of the big problems this room faces, let's be real, is a lack of power. We have some, could certainly use more. I have a podcast called Art of Power. I am obsessed with this topic. My 8th guest is a man named Barack Obama. And when I interviewed Obama, I had asked him, what is something you have learned about how power works that you did not know when you were a kid or when you were just starting off as a community organizer? What have you learned about power? He's like, it's simple. I used to think power was organized people and organized money. You get the people, you get the money, power. I have learned over the decades, power underlying people and money is the power of story. The stories we tell, the narratives we share. That is what moves people and money. Again, case in point, this extraordinary governor, Pritzker, who is sticking his neck out in a really distinct way. He has a story in his head about his own migrant journey. And so many second and third and fourth gen folks have lost that story. So this renaissance helps to bring up the power that we so desperately need to restore some semblance of sanity to the things that we're talking about today. So I want to thank you for listening to me. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you. And here is my book. It's Here We Are. The subcaption is American Dreams, American Nightmares. It's like I knew. And there are several copies. They're out in the hallway. I'm going to go stand there because I'm very excited to talk to folks, especially folks who genuinely are interested in what I am proposing about a movement across campuses that is anti-political and rigorous and grounded in truth. Please come and speak to me about that, okay? Thank you so much for your time.